Prince Harry is clinging desperately to the past. He seemingly is entirely unaware of the reality that his and Meghan Markle's decisions have excluded their children from the royal family. And yeah, nobody wants them to have an HRH. Nobody wants them to have a title. Nobody cares if they are working royals in the future, because somehow Harry, in his deluded mind, seems to actually seriously believe that at some point his children can choose whether or not they're working members of the royal family. That he doesn't seem to understand the impact of his decisions still years after Mexit just goes to show what a deluded and, frankly, I don't think very intelligent man Prince Harry is. And the more we hear about these things, the more it becomes so apparent how Harry is clinging to the past while Meghan wants a road to the future. And I imagine this conflict, which was started by his wife, may eventually lead to a split because Harry can't let the past go. And Meghan Markle is desperate to grasp the money she believes is in the future. So this could definitely result in some sort of split. But the fascinating situation around their passports and what Harry seemed to believe was in the future for his children is something definitely worth exploring, because we've said many times here, decisions have consequences, and Harry just seemingly can't accept the ones that he brought upon himself and fails to realize that he is not the hero of this story. He is the villain. So we are going to explore all of this today. But if you haven't been to Royal News Network before, my name is Brittany. I provide you all compelling royal commentary. So please feel free to hit that subscribe button. I would absolutely love to have you back. And we do a little section on here called the Crown Report. And I do have to say, Queen Maxima has done an excellent job leading the state visit to the Czech Republic after her husband had to return to the Netherlands due to a political crisis. She looks fantastic. She looks amazing. And for those of you who are royal shoe enthusiasts, we did see that Maxima has had her Gianvito Rossi pumps resold. And we also see that she wears a size 42, which I've heard that she has bigger feet. So I find that really interesting. I love shoes in general. So I love following the royal ladies. And anytime a photographer gets a shot of the shoes, I'm always very, very happy. So if you're not familiar, state visits are ways for countries to reforge their relationships. In addition to the royals going, and you get a little bit of that pomp and ceremony, I think that's why really in many ways, like, state visits are really reserved almost for royalty. Yes, heads of state go and meet each other, but state visits and all that accompany them are really a reflection of that royalty, because most other countries in the world do not have royals. And so when you can bring the royals, it brings extra attention and elevation to a country, I think, in many ways, in the state visit and everything. So it's definitely something that you really only see with royals. And I absolutely love and adore it. I want to see more of them. And I did a bit yesterday in my video, if you want to check that out, Meghan's twerking Lilibet into existence. And I talked about all the many achievements of royal women. So, I mean, I say things and then there's so much going on, I don't get a chance. But I do plan on doing a series profiling the various royal women, because one of the things I see constantly about Meghan is that she's so accomplished. I mean, she's the most accomplished woman ever to marry into a royal family. And I'm like, no, they're like literal PhDs who have become royals, women who were high in finance, in reporting and business and all these sorts of things, speech therapists, Olympians who have all married into royal families. There are many, 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 many accomplished women who have become royals. That somehow Meghan's accomplishments were difficult for, I guess, royal watchers to swallow was just a complete and utter joke. So I thought it'd be great to explain what the other royals have accomplished, because some of them are very, very successful before giving up that private life and that private access to, some of them could even, maybe, I'm thinking of Maxima in particular, could have been wealthier by herself working in finance than she could have been marrying into the Dutch royal family. I'm not sure. I don't know that for sure, but these women gave up their actual careers for a career as being a royal and serving others rather than themselves. So I think that's something very worthwhile to consider. And one other brief note here, because I want to keep the crown section a little bit shorter today, is that Beatrice Borromeo appears to be expecting her third child. I noticed it at the Dior show, and I mentioned it on my fashion video, but forgot to discuss it here. So I thought that would be worthwhile to share. A lot are reporting that it is a girl. I'm like, I don't know where you got that. So I don't feel comfortable saying, like, I know for sure it's a girl because I don't, but that would be fine. She already has two sons. So this will be her third child. So that would be very exciting. She is the daughter in law of Princess Caroline of Monaco. And she also has a documentary on Netflix, The Last King of Italy, I think it is, something to that effect, of following one of the members of the House of Savoy and sort of an accident that happened on his boat. So if you're interested in checking that out, I just looked it up. It's called The King Who Never Was. If you look up her name, Beatrice Borromeo, she comes from an ancient Italian household. There are cardinals in her direct line. So she comes from a very famous family in Italy, but does not have a title, but married a man who is also connected to royalty, but also doesn't have a title. Anyways, interesting things to note there. And I realize this went a little bit longer with only 2 bits of news, but let's get into this discussion of Harry, because this is sort of fascinating. People Magazine also has an article today talking about this royal rift. And what I want to say first, and think of this as we go through a couple of these articles, is that I look at Harry and I see a man who, to be quite frank, is dim. I am not saying that to be mean. I just look at the actions of a guy who obviously just does not have a full deck. I don't know where the inadequacies lie, but they're clearly not there. However, I can also see a situation where, yeah, maybe, because he seems to be somebody, I always thought this when I saw Harry before, is that he was a bit of a dummy, but had a heart of gold. Obviously, now it's kind of a heart of stone. But what I've noticed about Harry and what I try to do, because I try to understand people rather than just blame them. I try to understand maybe where they're at here. And Meghan is just obviously purely after whatever money grab she can get. But Harry, I think especially because he's so consumed with the past, I think Harry's situation is, in many ways, is that he doesn't understand where everything went wrong. He doesn't understand why the royal family didn't go along with their initial Brexit plan. He doesn't understand why his father and brother won't talk to him. Like, he kind of knows that maybe writing Spare was a bit of a dumb idea. But at the same time, he's kind of like, well, why don't they just like, they should just want to reconcile with me. I want to reconcile with them. He does not seem to understand that his actions have resulted in every single problem he's had for the last 5 stinking years. The problems all go back to Mexit and everything that has happened since then. Harry and Meghan wouldn't have gone on Oprah without Mexit. He wouldn't have written the book without Mexit. So many things would not have happened without that initial decision there, because that initial decision was all about self-interest and money. It was not about privacy. It wasn't about trying to fulfill a new role or anything like that. His wife was miffed that he was not a billionaire and he was a sole millionaire, and he wasn't that bright and wasn't going to make him that much money. And they would have to rely on daddy's and the brother-in-law's purse strings for the rest of their lives. And that wasn't good enough for Meghan Markle. She needed millions upon millions of dollars to buy a bunch of very expensive trinket jewelry, in my opinion. And Harry, in that initial decision, I think he was told a lot of things by his wife. They'll just go along with it. Honey, they'll love this idea. This is great. Your cousins do this, which is not true. They don't. Everybody will love this. We can still serve your grandmother. We can still serve your father and your brother and all these sorts of things. She spun, I think, quite a web for him. And he was dim enough to go along with it. And what he found, and I think this is at the core of, I think, the confusion, the anger, the bitterness, does not still fully comprehend that the action he took there had a consequence that he could not control and did not make his life better, is that the royal family had all the cards. And though Harry was one of the most popular members of the royal family, and I think that was really what was driving his ego, is this belief that he was so popular. And as I was thinking about this today, I remembered that when Harry had his whole, you could say, sort of twerking adjacent drama of him being naked, playing naked billiards there in Las Vegas, is that Harry was able to kind of escape that controversy in many ways. And people kind of applauded it because of service. When you serve, if you make a mistake now and then, but you're still with the people, people tend to forgive you. But when you leave a life of service to serve yourself, that little buffer you had before no longer exists. And Harry, in his arrogance and foolishness, thought that he could just walk in, demanded what he wanted, and walk out. And again, I think a lot of that was fueled by Meghan. And yes, a lot of other things, family drama and everything, of course, play into this. But I'm talking about that core incident, Mexit, because that has informed everything else. If Harry and Meghan maybe got exactly what they wanted, would they have done Oprah? Would they have done Netflix? Would they have done Spotify and the book deal? I'm not sure. But that core decision resulted in this situation where Harry completely gave up control. Because when you have no leverage in a situation, which Harry and Meghan did not, and you issue your demands, well, you have nothing to barter with. You completely give up your control. And so they all make the decisions for you. And they don't have to take your interest or feelings or anything into consideration. And there is this bit, and it got replayed again, where Harry was going to go to the Sandringham Summit, and he thought they were going to hash things out and come to some sort of accord. But the decisions had already been made. And he was incredibly miffed by that. But I'm like, why are you surprised? You can't dictate what they do. They made the decisions, and they did not have to tell you, because you are not in charge of those decisions. They are, in terms of the monarchy. The monarchy had all the leverage there. They had all the power. It was their institution. Harry was a mere part of it. It's like you leaving your company and making demands on how things should run after you're gone. Harry could not do that. He fundamentally could not do that. And he didn't understand that leaving had a massive consequence to him. And I think his mixed feelings about it, because he thought he wanted to leave. He thought he wanted out. But I think now he really wants back in. And he's confused because he's getting multiple messages from his wife. His wife wants to twerk on Instagram for the masses and show off her lady bits for the world. And he's like, he's going along with it. But I'm sure at the same time, he's like, oh, is this really the way we want to go? And maybe I'm giving Harry too much of the benefit of the doubt. I realize this is a long intro. However, it's also incredibly important, which is that I don't think Harry knows when down is up and up is down. I think he's very confused about how everything went so wrong. And he's lashing out. He's bitter. He's angry. And he pushes the anger onto his father and his brother and the institution and the gray men and all these sorts of things. When Harry is the villain of his story, he's the antagonist. He is the villain. And everybody else are either the protagonists or just side characters. Harry is the villain of his story along with his wife. And he seems to think that he's the hero. And I think it's that clash of fantasy versus reality that I think drives so much of Harry anymore, because he doesn't understand reality, but he wants to live the fantasy. And unfortunately, when you tend to live in a fantasy, reality comes back and slaps you on the face really, really hard sometimes. And that is what's happened with Harry. So let's get into this really strange story regarding the passports. Now, I saw this reported elsewhere, but first came from The Guardian. It says Harry and Meghan, in this instance, wanted to change the kids' names to Spencer. So this goes back to the Spencer story because of passport delays. I mean, for Pete's sakes, people, like, grow up. Like, why are you so obsessed with it? It's a horrible institution, according to the two of you. Why are you so obsessed with your kids having an HRH and a princess title? Again, I think it goes back to these are two actually quite dim people. And the only thing they have going for them is the royal titles and really nothing else. Now, Meghan now has discovered twerking can help her grow on Instagram. So be prepared for a lot more debasement in the future, because Meghan is just desperate to be famous and have a lot of money. And she is more than willing to sell herself and her soul in order to get it. That is my personal opinion. You can take it for what you wish, but that is Meghan Markle. She's willing to do anything. She has no decorum, no class, no tact, no dignity, nothing. Now that we have the twerking video, be prepared for a lot more cringy, awful content to come, because she's been saving it for years and she's finally hit the thing that works, because she gained like 400,000 followers. Now, I will say, and I'll do a whole video on this, I don't think she'll end up actually being all that helpful of followers in the future, because now she has kind of split her brand between happy homemaker and twerking club girl. So those are two very different markets to reach for branding. So her branding is still a disaster. But let's get into this absolute mess. And so this came according to the bid to change the name. And this is just again sheer stupidity. I mean, like, come on. Is that they were so exasperated by the delay in getting a passport for all things because they needed their kids to have a prince and princess title on there and to have an HRH because they can't give it up. That's why the royal family has to move, go through parliament, call them a traitors. They are. They're killing your brand slowly. Yes, people understand the difference, but they also don't understand it either. People think, oh, Harry and Meghan are the new version of the monarchy. They're not. They're low class hustlers. That's what they are. They're low class hustlers. That's always what Meghan has been. She's proved herself time and time again. That is who she truly is. She is not this high class, dignified woman. She's common and at the same time, too, very much on I can't. I'm not even like I want to say a word, but I also don't want to say the word. So I'll leave that up to your imagination. Anyways, so apparently the discussion became mute because the passports finally came through. But again, this is like so incredibly stupid that you guys are so unbelievably petty is ridiculous. Harry and Meghan had feared that the UK officials were dragging their feet because the passport applications included titles HRH, His or Her Royal Highness for both children. So they could probably get that on the British passports, but that would not be on the American passports. And I think they said that this would be the only place where the name is used because you can't use a HRH, His or Her Royal Highness title on American things. We do not recognize royalty here. We do not have royalty here. That needs to be said again. So the applications use this name Sussex, which the family has already started using publicly until 2023. Archie had a US and British passports under the name Mountbatten Windsor, and that will still be the case. He may be able to change it to Archie Sussex, but he would not be able to change it to His Royal Highness Prince Harry or Prince Archie or whatever. Talk about a terrible name for a royal child. I'm sorry. Like Archie for another kid, fine. I'm not still a fan of it, but Archie for a royal, like when you have like Richard and James and Alexander and Stephen, like regal names, you go with Archie. There was a clear reluctance to issue passports for the kids. The standard wait time for passports is 3 weeks, but after 3 months without receiving them because of technical issues, it's understood that Harry and Meghan reapplied using a 24-hour passport service only to have their meeting canceled at the last minute owing to a system's failure. The source claimed that the king hadn't wanted Archie and Lily to carry the titles. Most of all, the HRH and the British passports once created will be the first and perhaps only legal proof of their names. So yes, again, they can't have it on American stuff. But there's, I think, two things going on here. Number one is that the British embassy was like, and there is a consulate in Los Angeles. I've been to that one before. And I think there was just a question of, do we really like, can we do this? Should we do this? Like there were questions about it. I imagine as soon as the queen was in the ground, Harry and Meghan were back already putting this on passports and stuff. Like they desperately, desperately wanted this. I mean, again, to go on national television like multiple times and tell us all how terrible your whole family is, to want titles for your kids from a family you consider so horribly terrible is just ridiculous. But here as well, the king hadn't wanted Archie and Lily to carry titles or the HRH. I believe that is 100% true. I think the royal family dragged their feet because they did immediately, like the announcement of Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, there was a divide. Harry and Meghan announced it and the palace dragged their feet to put it on the website. I think because the palace was like, we didn't want you to do this. There's no reason for you to do this. You're irrelevant. You two morons have made yourselves irrelevant to the future of this institution. So why in the world do your kids need titles? They don't. That's the truth. And so I think this was 100% true. I think the royal family were trying to convince Harry and Meghan for months to drop this or just said, we're not interested in this. And Harry and Meghan were like, we don't care. We're going to do it. So I think the royal family, again, should return the favor and go, we don't care if you guys want the titles. We'll just take them from you. We don't care. Because Harry and Meghan certainly don't care about the royals. I don't understand why Charles gives them still the time of day. They definitely don't care about you. Charles, like, they don't care about your feelings. Meghan especially. Don't be weak in this situation because, again, your charity is not going to be returned to you. So, goes on to say Harry was at the point where the British passports for his children and with their updated Sussex surnames since the death of the Queen were being blocked with a series of excuses over the course of 5 months. Again, I'm sure there were questions. Why do we need to do this? This is unnecessary. But again, Harry's dim and he needs this. And again, he's living in the past. He doesn't understand that his decisions means he has no future in the institution of his family. He willingly walked away and doesn't seem to understand that nobody is there going, "Oh, Harry, oh, we just love to have you back." Nobody wants that. So it says, out of sheer exasperation, he went to his uncle to effectively say, and this is completely and utterly moronic. My family are supposed to have the same name and they're stopping that from happening because the kids are legally HRH. If this blows up and they don't let the kids be called Sussex, then can we use Spencer as a surname? Like, this is stupidity. Why not just go with Archie Sussex and Lily Sussex? It's the HRH that was the issue. Charles didn't want that. And then it comes to probably one of the most idiotic things I've ever heard from Harry, to be quite honest. And it proves that the guy is completely and utterly disconnected from reality. So it says here, the Guardian understands that Prince Harry wants to keep the HRH titles for his children so that when they grow older, they can decide for themselves whether they want to become working royals or stay out of public life. Harry, you're an idiot. That is never going to happen. Like, not even your freaking cousins are working royals. Like, dude, seriously. And I can believe this is true because we had the People magazine article talking about the rift, talking about Harry living in the past. This is a reflection of that. Harry, this is not happening. William has even talked or alluded to the idea that Charlotte and Louis may have to get normal jobs, which I don't think is going to be possible. They're going to need them as working royals 150%, and their spouses, they don't need or want Archie and Lilibet. I'm so sorry. That ship has long since sailed. It's been 5+ years, man. Like, what were you thinking? Did you really think that you could initiate Maxit, be told there is no route back, like after the year timetable, and just think that, oh, I'm just going to keep the HRH for my kids because, they can be working royals at some point if they want to be? No, dude, you can't even be a working royal anymore. I mean, come on, this should be Captain Obvious. This should be Captain Obvious. Like, oh my gosh. It's absolutely insane. And I know, like, some people could say disagree or anything, but it shows a man who's very, very disconnected from reality and very disconnected from the consequences of his decisions. And actions have consequences. I'm so sorry. If you leave a job, you don't get to give your kids the benefits of it, like 20 years later. And why would your brother want your kids as working royals? He doesn't like your wife. He doesn't trust her, like, at all. So why, and he doesn't trust you either. So why would he want your kids to be working royals? Like, this is not a job you can apply for. You either are or you aren't. Like, that's it. There's no other there. What in the world is Harry thinking? But we get a little bit of an indication of this maybe in the People magazine article. But again, I will say this is not a well man. This is not a well man. And I think this could be very much leading to their split at some point. So let's get into it. So Meghan is very business about the royal rift as Prince Harry's left out of the details in England. So it says Meghan and Harry support each other. I very much question that in many ways. I mean, they're stuck together. Like, they are in the toxic vortex of misery. Like, they are the only life rafts they have in that. And it says they're aware of everything going on in England, but they're left out of the details. There's clearly no trust. Well, no duh, Sherlock. And it says Meghan, who is focused on the future, while Harry has one foot in the past. It is very business about it. So this is sort of fascinating. And you can see the rift, I think, beginning to slowly widen. So he is obsessed with the past because, again, she forced him to do something I don't think he would have done on his own. He may have thought it was his idea, but now he has buyer's remorse. And his wife doesn't, because she wants to live in that $15 million mansion, go to parties with Tyler Perry, and make all the money humanly possible so she can wear more expensive trinket jewelry. That's her role. She only cares about the money. She doesn't care about him. She doesn't care about his family. She doesn't really care about anything but the money and the fame and the fortune. That has been the writing on the wall. Again, watch the twerking video. She spends half of it looking at herself in the camera. I mean, come on. And so Harry has one foot in the past here. And Meghan is looking to the future because Meghan, again, it's all about the money in the future. And Harry is looking at the past and his royal life, the one that she forced him to give up. And he didn't really want to do that at the end of the day. Now, again, he made all the decisions here. I'm not saying that he didn't. But if you think about this from a logical perspective, she forced him to give up the role he was destined to play. And now he's kind of sitting there twiddling his thumbs, going, I kind of like that. And so this could result in tensions and divisions, and he could start to resent her because she forced him to give up the life he wanted, and she is mad that he won't give up the past. But if they had done this normally, come to a consensus together rather than Meghan forcing it on him by telling him something horrible would happen to her if he didn't do X. Well, now nothing bad is happening. She doesn't really seem to care that anything bad might happen, throwing her life up there on Instagram. And so the reasons don't make sense anymore. So this is going to lead to a schism because when you force somebody to do something that really they probably would never have done on their own, at some point, they're going to resent you for helping them make that decision. So that's why Princess Madeline of Sweden, she moved to Florida with her husband. That was a joint decision. They ended up moving back because she's like, well, my family's here. Chris's family is here. It made sense for us to move back. Our parents are getting older. Like, you can tell they made the decision together. I don't know if Sweden is where maybe he fully wants to be, but it makes sense for them. They get a lot of benefits for living in Sweden, and she's a royal. So it works. You know, they could have lived in Germany. They've lived in the UK. I mean, they had to go back to Sweden technically for the kids' titles, but they were given a chance to get a reprieve in Florida and everything. So lots of comparisons you could say in some ways of that situation. But you see a couple who was working together, and Harry and Meghan, who I think Meghan forced the ultimatum on Harry. He pulled the trigger, and now again, I think has buyer's remorse. Through it all, Meghan stands firmly by Harry's side as long as it's convenient. I think as soon as it's inconvenient, she'll drop him like a hot potato, supporting him through his ongoing lawsuits and the painful rift with his family, which will come painful for her when he starts to have to pay out some of the lawsuits he's lost. And that is diminishing whatever she is making. But an insider says Meghan wishes her husband could be less burdened by the past and more present in the life they've built. Again, I want to point this out because this is what happens when you force somebody to make a decision and they weren't really there without you. Like, he made this decision for her. He made it to save her. He did all these things for her. And then he's sitting there going, well, I did all this for you. And I think in some ways he wants it reciprocated. Why won't you do things for me? And then I've done all this, and like, I didn't really truly want to do this. And now I'm stuck in here. I don't know what to do. I don't like this Hollywood life. I have to work hard. I don't like that. Everything is combining together because you can be, he kind of likes it and he doesn't like it. Two things can be true at once. And I think that's very true for Harry in this situation here. He wanted to leave. Yeah, he wanted to stay. He likes it in California, but he'd rather have his royal life. He wants to have a relationship with his family, but he's also mad at them. He likes being supported by his wife, but he's also mad at her in some ways. This is what happens in an unhealthy dynamic. This is an unhealthy, I think, dynamic. He wasn't the leader here. And I think part of the psychology here, you could say, and I'm probably reading too much into this, but that men naturally, generally want to lead. And I think in some ways, Harry thought he was leading, but in reality, it was Meghan's decision, not his. And now he's kind of been succumbed to this beta male status. And that's got to undermine his self-confidence and so many different things. And he has this royal thing, and his wife is mad about the royal thing. So all these sorts of things, all these things are playing in. And he feels, I think, so incredibly conflicted. But if Meghan had been smart and I think spent more time building, let's say, to Mexit rather than just dropping the bomb, I think Harry would be a bit happier in the situation. But she forced the move. Now she has to deal with the angry, bitter man. And he's angry and bitter in part because of what she made him do. And that will factor into their relationship. He's mad at the decision he made to please her and that it's not pleasing him anymore. So it says the rift between Harry and his father is 5 years deep, talks about what he said. And here's the cover, of course. And talks about how the king once called Harry his darling boy. But there was some interesting tidbits here. While William remains estranged from Harry and Meghan, some royal observers believe it's King Charles as the head of the Church of England and a longtime advocate for unity who should make the first new move. But inside palace walls, hesitation reigns. Okay, I just hate this stuff where it's like it has to be Charles. Charles is the offended party, and you can forgive somebody, but Harry has to make amends. Harry is the one who blew everything up. He has to be the one who sifts among the rubble to start rebuilding things. Why is the burden on Charles? Why? Harry called him a terrible father in his book. Why does Charles have to go, oh, darling boy? Like, I don't understand that. I just hate this narrative that somehow it's Charles's responsibility to mend the rift. No, it's Harry's. Harry is the one who separated himself. Harry is the one who has offended his entire family, you know, made the last months of his grandfather and grandmother's life more difficult needlessly because he's incredibly selfish. I don't understand why it's Charles as the head of the Church of England. I don't like the fact that because he's the head of the church, he must do things because we all have sinned, right? Part of the Christian faith is understanding that you have sinned against God. Well, Harry has sinned against his father. And it's not God's responsibility to make amends with us for us sinning against him. No, it's our responsibility to acknowledge our sin to God. So you can see the same father son dynamic with Charles and Harry too. I firmly believe, yes, Charles has a responsibility as a Christian to forgive Harry, but that doesn't mean he just accepts him into his household as if nothing has happened. That's not right either. That's not even healthy, I don't think, because you have to reconcile. And reconciliation is important, but has to be a two-way street. And this idea that it's just Charles's responsibility, I think demeans Harry's horrifically awful role in destroying his family. So there's an underlying issue of trust. Like, well, no, duh. The King and William don't trust Harry and Meghan with any kind of confidential information. Again, we have been told that Harry and Meghan learned about Catherine's cancer from the television like everybody else because nobody told them. And the King doesn't have anyone inside his party. And insiders add that the King isn't surrounded by voices encouraging reconciliation. Well, no, duh. Why would he be? Harry and Meghan have burned all the relationships with the palace. Why in the world would anybody going, yeah, rah, rah? It's just completely inappropriate. And William has shown no interest extending an olive branch. I believe when he is king, if Charles hasn't stripped the titles, William certainly will. He doesn't want Harry and Meghan anywhere around the throne. And Charles really should think that way too. And Queen Camilla just says, stay out of it. And that's the best advice. Clive Alderon is unlikely to encourage reconciliation. I was surprised by this quote from Valentine Lowe. It says, there is not a good angel in his ear to say, be a good dad and make the first move. So to me, I don't like this phrasing. And maybe, again, maybe he didn't think it all the way through. I don't know. But why is it the good angel that says you must be a good dad and make the first move? Why? Again, because it's the son who has sinned against the father. If it was the father who had sinned against the son, I would understand. But the son has sinned against the father here. It's the son's job to acknowledge the sin, acknowledge the mistakes, and reconcile there. If Harry doesn't learn that, he will just be more miserable to people. He will just be more destructive in other people's lives because he has not been held to account. He has not been made to reconcile for his actions. Like, this is like 101 for parenting too. If your kid, slaps you in the face and they're 3 and they're mad, do you just go, oh, honey, let's reconcile? No, you discipline them. You have to discipline them. Otherwise, they will walk all over you. Sorry, I get passionate about this topic because I just find this to be horrifically awful advice. And I feel like it's giving Harry a pass for all of his horrific behavior, and he does not deserve a pass. He doesn't. It says Harry's pleas for peace were widely seen as another blow. It wasn't meant to be an attack, but it would be seen as one, Lowe says. It makes Charles reaching out even harder. Yeah. Again, Harry going and saying that his father is preventing his family from getting security and wants something bad to happen to them is an utter and complete hogwash of a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's not true. None of it is true because Charles has no control. The royal household has control in terms that they can say, well, this person is no longer a working member of the royal household. We don't extend security to other members of the working household. Why would we to Harry? And when I say the household, I mean the family overall, not the household of working royals. So it says it's been difficult for him to get proper updates about his dad. My heart weeps for you, Harry. Maybe you should have thought of that before you called him racist on television. If you had that level of breach in a family and you are estranged, you run that risk every day of having something unfathomable to deal with. Yeah, and that's Harry's problem. That's Harry's problem. He again is the villain in this story. He's not the hero. He is the villain. So it goes over the stupid Spencer thing, and it says here there is so much baggage there that the idea that one meeting would resolve everything is ridiculous, but having some contact would seem better than none. No, I would say go non-contact. Go non-contact. Harry deserves it, to be quite frank. Harry deserves it. And I did smile, but I don't relish in that. But this is Harry's problem. This is not Charles's problem. Charles did not do this. William did not do this. Catherine didn't do this. Camilla, Andrew, Fergie, Beatrice, Eugenie, Zara, Michael, or Mike, Peter, Autumn, like Elizabeth, Philip, nobody did this to Harry. Harry did this to himself. Instead of resolving things quietly behind closed doors, Harry decided to go public. Now, his reasoning is that his family wouldn't listen to him. But maybe the family didn't listen because Harry wasn't listening first. Harry did not hear their side. He just was wild and lashing out. And now I think what Meghan has created for herself to live with is an angry, bitter man who's miserable on multiple levels. He likes California. He loves his kids. He allegedly loves his wife, but he doesn't love what his life has become. And because of that, I'm sure Meghan is probably getting frustrated at times about dealing with a man who is very, very angry and very, very bitter and very much lashing out at everyone. And I have no sympathy for her. She created the monster. She is the one who forced her husband to do essentially what you could argue was the unthinkable. And now she's dealing with the consequence of that decision. And so is Harry. And I think they're both in some ways a little bit miserable, although I'm sure she's quite a lot more happy than he is. But I'm sure she's frustrated too. She's like, well, we've done this now, Harry, buck up and let's move on. And he's like, but no, I want, again, healthier dynamic here would have led to a lot less heartache. This was a decision made, I think, by Harry under duress. Yes, he is a horrible actor in this situation. He just is completely and utterly unaware of how everything went wrong. And he's lashing out all the time. It's always his father's fault. It's always the government's fault. It's always everybody else's fault when the fault truly lies under that increasingly sparse red head. It's all Harry. It's all Harry and his wife. He only has himself to blame. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know what you think, and I shall talk to you again soon. Bye.